Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Ghost Files Live. I believe this is episode 10. In a 2-year span, we're just spitting them out as fast as we can. That's what we do here at Womp Stomp Films. No, thank you for spending your Friday with me. I see people are starting to pour into the channel. As you know, my name is Vincent DiSanti. I should probably put my name up so everyone can see it. Boom, there it is. I am the founder of Womp Stomp Films and director of Never Hike Alone. I do these weekly podcasts to talk about films that either I've done, worked on, stuff that's out in the world. It's going to be kind of a grab bag for the next several weeks. But this week, we're going to be covering the original pitch for Never Hike Alone 2, which dates back to about 2017-18. I pretty much had a pitch ready for Never Hike Alone 2 ready to go as soon as the first film was done. But I'm going to take fans on a ride of where the film started, what the original aspirations were, and then the idea to do the crowdfund, and then how we kind of got through it. But I'm going to just pitch sort of some of the story stuff that we never really got to make, because the original version that I pitched was definitely like studio focused. These were studio ideas. If we could basically have the budget that we needed and we could get access to any actor from the franchise at all, how we would have put it together. And then we can talk about afterwards. You can kind of understand why we went certain ways. But I was going back through some of the stuff for the behind the scenes this week, and I was discovering old scripts and remembering old ideas. And I thought this would be fun to share. And we talked about it a little bit on the podcast last week. Before I jump to that, in fact, one thing I should do is turn off this music. Shout out to the Merkins. Thank you for this awesome theme song, which I'm now going to use for everything. It's just too funny. Did that on the fly. Just want to thank those guys again for all the help they did with Never Hike Alone 2. Really helped us with crowdfunding. I'm sure there are some streamers here from those streams, which, thank you for coming over. So let's jump into some stuff for tonight. First of all, welcome. It's Friday. How was your week? Is everyone having a good and relaxing week? They're ready to sit down. We're going to have a little story time. I think this will be fun. Oh, Kaiden's here. What's up, man? Miss you too. Shout out to Kaiden, who went on that hike last week. I think we talked about it a little bit, but he let me know that the camp that we shot Never Hike Alone, one Never Hike in the Snow and Never Hike Alone 2 in, is still safe from the massive landslide that happened up there last winter, or this winter really. It happened before, right after I left California. It's actually oh man, that was scary. So we'll get into some stuff this week. Let me just get into a couple of announcements. Never Hike Alone 2 has received its Russian subs from, she may even be here tonight, Yana, who, amazing. Thank you, Yana, for getting the Russian subtitles up. They are now up on YouTube. I got to make some adjustments to Italian. I think I announced that last week. We got the Italian subtitles, and really cool news. We actually got a letter from Panic Fest this week. Never Hike Alone 2 and Bath Bomb will be part of this year's Panic Fest held in Kansas City. Thinking about going. I don't know. We're trying to figure that out with my current schedule. It'd be nice to kind of go down there, but they're going to be planning some really cool stuff. I've been meaning to get out there. They've been big supporters of Never Hike Alone 2. So thank you to everyone at Panic Fest. Congratulations to all the other filmmakers. I saw Michelle Inuato was going to be there with Live Screamers. She was actually out with Live Scream when I went out with Never Hike Alone. So it's cool to see an old, familiar face back in the, seems like it's deja vu again with that stuff. So really, really cool. Congratulations to everyone involved in both projects. Womp Stomp wise, congrats to my team. If they didn't know, I got to let a few people know. And congrats to Colin Cooper, the director of Bath Bomb, and Ronnie, the producer, and everybody over there who did an amazing job on that project. I'm really excited for people to see that. I know many of you may have backed it. It's going to be going through the festival circuit before I think you guys get a chance to see it pretty soon, but I'm sure Colin will work something out. So, or just try to make it out to one of these fests. Yeah, Panic Fest has great taste. Panic Fest, Telluride Horror Show. There's a lot of really, Film Quest. There's a ton out there. Genre Blast, I love. Crimson Screen, I love. And there's a few other ones that I'm trying to get into. Chicago Horror Fest is really great. New Bedford New Bedford Film Festival. We're getting up there. We're building our name. Still accepting submissions. So yeah, I figure. So that's the updates there. Just continuing with more post-production and fulfillment stuff, inching things each week. There's some other projects that we're also working on. So those are behind the scenes. So just staying busy. But it's nice to take a break right now and kind of sit back and think about Never Hike Alone 2. So let me see. We got about 30 people in, which I think is pretty cool. Oh, hey, my girlfriend is in the chat. Mo. She's got a little chicken right there for her beak. Anyway, let me see. I love the fact that you got Thom Mathews on board with the first two, and it would be awesome to see Laura Park Lincoln in a flick as well. Well, I know Laura did do a film. I actually did a film with Laura, 13th Fanboy, which is very Friday the 13th really adjacent. But I'll just say this. I'm going to pitch you guys through what would have been Never Hike Alone 2. It'll take you a little bit through the story about how it came that way. And then after I'm done with the pitch, then I'm going to jump into the chat for questions. And then, so just kind of like, if you want to ask stuff along the way, I may catch it, but I may not, because I'm going to have banners up. They're going to keep me on sort of track of like each part, because it's sort of, there's Never Hike Alone is in there, but like there was a completely other way it was woven. So I have to follow my story list, or else I'm going to go off on too many tangents, which I know I'm going to go off in a million anyway. I've already done it. You know what I mean? So let's see. Never Hike Alone 2. Well, let's just take a step back for a minute. Never Hike Alone 2 was something that I came up with pretty much, or started thinking about the moment that Thom Mathews had signed on to the project in January. And remember, we didn't tell anybody that Thom Mathews is in the project. He was surprised in October when we released the film in 2017. No one knew that he was in the film. It was like one of the biggest surprises that we kind of unveiled on people. And so, as they say in the industry, after the release of the Never Hike Alone, we had a little heat. I was doing meetings. I was meeting people. And as we know, Friday the 13th had been going through a lot of tumultuous years. They had trouble getting development going on multiple films. It was pretty much stalled there. I believe during the tail end of doing Never Hike Alone, that's when the talk of the what's it called? The lawsuit. How can I not remember that way? So anyway, the lawsuit was going on. And so basically we saw that as an opportunity to be like, let's get our ducks in a row to say, maybe when this lawsuit is over, because when we first learned about the lawsuit, you have to remember that a lot of fans went in thinking that Victor would never win, and it would be an open and shut case, and Sean would get the rights back and things would just go back to normal. And so people started to line up pitches for what they wanted to do with Friday the 13th, thinking that at the end of the decision, stuff would be made. And so we tried to get in line for that. We started pitching to different companies. And by the time I had Never Hike Alone, I had come up with like not a rough pitch, but I mean, a pretty well thought out pitch that I got Thom on board. That was the original pitch that I gave Vinny Guastaferro when he originally got on board. And I was actually able to pitch this pitch at Warner Brothers Studio for a while through a connection that I had in animation. And so, without naming names, so I don't get anybody in trouble, but basically I was told that there was a mandate in the Warner Brothers world that they wanted to grow in-house IP. I was aware that the rights were back at Warner Brothers, that they were just sort of sitting there, and that no one had ever done animation with Friday the 13th anymore. And I wanted to take my two sort of career paths that I had taken, because I had spent 8 years in animation and knew a lot of people in animation, saying, what if we can get Friday the 13th on the small screen and streaming for, Friday the 13th? Because they were looking to create stuff like that at the time. They were looking for pitches and ideas with in-house IP. Somebody kind of casually mentioned that to me. And then I said, well, what are they doing with Friday the 13th? Technically, they, through the relationships, New Line is on the Warner Brothers lot. The relationships that they have with their Warner Brothers Animation, those things they're all there to be organized if whoever wants to do the paperwork to get these projects together. But would they be interested in hearing a pitch? I went in and did a pitch to Warner Brothers Animation. I did 2 pitches there, and then I did another pitch to a development executive. And it basically is going to encapsulate what I was going to hear. This is a full boat, like, hey, if we could do anything, we're going to, take the Never Hike Alone idea, we're going to put it in animation, and we're going to string it out and tell it over a series of tales that were going to be animated. And the overall idea for the actual idea I was pitching was a Friday the 13th anthology animated series, where every year a few, like basically 8 films would come out from 8 different directors that would have, wildly different stories, because that's what Friday the 13th was. Friday the 13th is a pizza with 12 different slices. You pick your slice, that's your favorite one, and you kind of order them in the order you like them. And everybody's sort of order can be different. Some people like it the same, but let people go off on tangents, sort of like fan films, but at a more professional and more supported level. And it was actually a very well-received pitch. I was actually supposed to pitch to another level where this possibly could have been on a streaming service, but that is when, because Sean had originally lost, it went to Victor. Everything seemed to be like it was going to be cut and dry. And then Sean appealed, and that's when sort of talks died. And I had to figure out how to take this large pitch and make the Never Hike Alone 2 that you saw, with COVID getting in the way, with the strikes getting in the way, with life getting in the way, and all that stuff. So this is where the idea began, but this is what everybody rallied and got excited about doing this film. So without any further ado, this is basically the original pitch for Never Hike Alone 2. So let's talk about the opening. From the very beginning, the opening was the same. It was Thom on the dock. It was the young boy on the dock, Thom coming down, and having that moment where, young Tommy is taken into the water. He dives in and wakes up understanding that, Jason had stolen his life, and he was still pissed about it. And he knew that Jason was still out there, and he was going to go into the forest and he was going to go kick his ass. And so he gets his shotgun. And in the original version of the film, and actually for a long time, we had the original Jarvis house property as the set that this scene was going to be taking place at. Unfortunately, during COVID, a group went into this location and sort of messed it up a little bit. And so the owner said, we don't want people shooting here anymore. So we had to adjust that location to a friend's house where we just took the bedroom. But we were supposed to get that at the Jarvis house. So we were going to start the movie at the Jarvis house, where he wakes up in the Jarvis house, he gets in his Jeep, he drives away, we see the Jarvis house, and he takes off. Everything that you see in the film after that is pretty much spot on with what I would have wanted to do with a feature film budget. Big sweeping drone shots, Tommy driving up the mountain, going up to camp, kicking in all the doors, searching all the places, and just not being able. He's searching for a fight that he can't find, and that was the name of the sequence for a long time. It was searching for a fight. And Tommy goes back down to the dock, gets down to, actually in the original version, instead of going down to the dock, he went down to, he actually went to the same cabin as where Mabry dies, and where, what's his name? Mark Hill, his body is up there as well. Tommy ends up in that cabin, but everything's been moved. The cabin's completely wiped out. The only thing that's left are the 2 beds. And Tommy ends up sitting in the bed where Jason sat. And that's where he ended the original opening of the scene. Unfortunately, the camp that we shot those scenes at was leveled before we could shoot Never Hike Alone 2. So that's when I came up with the idea to have him go back down to the dock, which actually ended up making a lot more sense. Do that and go from there. This is where things start to basically kind of go in line. Again, Tommy comes back up. He has his back and forth with Rick, where, they argue about what's going on. Thom knows that Jason is still out in the forest. Rick believes that Tommy is the cause of everything, and they butt heads over that. We meet Kyle MacLeod in the same exact way, except his story was meant to be a little bit of expanded there. In the original version of the Never Hike Alone pitch, Thom, not only does Kyle watch, Thom and not Thom, but not only to watch Tommy and Rick fight and do his little confessional, but we actually cut to the next scene with him. And the next scene was the actual shovel commercial from Never Hike Alone 1, but complete. And it was, it starts with him, and he does the whole bit. He's like, hey, what's up, trail chunkies? He's like, this week I'm coming at you with another gear tip. And it is the 6-piece collapsible shovel. It comes with, all these, it's made by, Landon Industries, and it's amazingly strong. And like, let's see how it works. And it digs, and it cuts to him digging into something. It saws, and it cuts to him sawing something. And then it chops, and he hits it up against the tree, and it doesn't break the log. And he goes, "Fuck, piece of shit. All right, take two." And it cuts and snap. And that would take us right back into Never Hike Alone 1, where he breaks the branch and a few minutes later stumbles over the Camp Crystal Lake sign. We replay that scene basically as we had it before, but we actually show Jason stepping into the trail behind him, much like in Never Hike Alone 1, where he steps on behind him in the no trespassing scene. And this was meant to sort of take that place. This was mostly shaved down because of time that we had to shoot. So we had to basically encapsulate that all in one scene. And that's how that scene ended up kind of spreading out and becoming what it was for the film. We just condensed it a little bit to save a little time to get it shot. At this point, after the shovel commercial, we go back to the hospital and we follow Tommy there. And there's a few things that are different about this version. The first version is that Diana Hill is way different. Diana Hill originally wasn't the main character, or the really the main character that was supposed to take place. She was one of like the high B level characters that was connected to another short that we were going to do, Never Hike in the Snow. But the original version of it was going to be a hunter, and it was her husband. And so it was less on theme with Friday the 13th, but it was just meant to be, because originally Never Hike in the Snow was just meant to be a 5-minute like introduction that was just about the kill, learning a little bit about her and a little bit about the mystery, and then setting things up. It was sort of part of a trailer that we were going to put together. And so in this world, she's missing her husband, but it's not as sort of the main theme of the film. She's just somebody there who Thom can sympathize with. But in this version, Thom was a little bit more of an outcast. People really kept their distance from him. There was even a scene where Axel sort of explained that, like, listen, when he was a kid, like, you know, really screwed up things happen to him. People worry about him. They wonder if he's going to snap one day. And then they get a call. Now, this call is much different from the call that they got in the Never Hike Alone 2 as it is. There was actually a bigger action scene that took place in this version to show a little bit about who Tommy is now. And in this scene, there was a car crash where a car had flipped over, a couple car pileup. They show up on scene, and Tommy ends up going into an active rescue of yet rescuing a young boy from a oh wow maybe your son. Oh, that's right. Hold on, I'm skipping ahead. So so we meet Diana Hill, but we also meet somebody else, which was you would have met Mabry, Deputy Mabry's wife and son were originally supposed to be in the original Never Hike Alone. Too. They were sort of background characters, and they were sort of there in certain moments where we would have met Diana and her sort of having a moment because they had both lost people on the same day. There was also a moment where we had her visiting Rick Cologne, because the one thing we weren't able to weave in was that Alan Mabry was his son-in-law. He was married to Rick's daughter. We wanted Rick to have a daughter. We wanted him to have a family. We wanted Rick to have more ties. But, you know, when you have a feature film budget, you can kind of grow those cast of characters out. With an independent film budget, you kind of have to focus on the main characters and not have too much there. But we did want to round out Rick a little bit more and round out Mabry, since he was another person who had been missing and was sort of another background theme. But these were extra people that were supposed to be there. And it was sort of Diana seeing her, reminding her of losing her husband at the same time was kind of a big thing. So we go from there. So then we go to the car crash. The car crash involved Tommy showing up with his two EMTs, Denny and Axel. They rescue this child from a car, but as they rescue the mother, she doesn't survive. And so he sort of spends a moment, and it's funny because they kind of did it in Batman, the new Batman, but he spends a moment with the kid. He spends a moment with him, just sort of reminiscing of the fact that he lost his mom, you know, and he recognizes the hurt that this kid has. And in that moment, as he's walking back to his car, he gets a phone call, which is sort of one of the biggest, you know, things that we weren't able to do, which was get Megan Garris and a family aspect involved. So in the original version, Never Hike Alone 2, Tommy and Megan were together, but they were separated. Tommy wanted to live in Crystal Lake, felt like it was his duty to stay with everybody and protect Crystal Lake. And Megan Garris wanted to leave. They had a family. It was not healthy for him to be kicking around in the forest and doing all this stuff. And so for the most part, they butted heads and they separated ways. But they have a daughter, and the daughter sort of gets between the both of them. And he gets a phone call from his daughter, basically saying, like, I can't deal with mom. She's like really driving me up a wall. I'm coming to stay with you for the weekend. And he's like, listen, I'm working tonight. Don't come up here. I'm not going to be back till the morning. She's like, well, I'll just meet you at the hospital. No big deal. And he's like, not going to be able to do anything. And then Megan would call. And she would basically just say, like, you got to send her back. And she's not, she's being unreasonable. They try to have a moment, and you can tell that, like, there's still something there between them. They're still good parents, but there's something holding them apart. He tries to say something in that moment, but it doesn't quite go. And he goes back to work, and they get another call. And that's when they got the call to go out to the Forest Service. At that point, things pretty much pick up just as they are in the film. Tommy showing up to the ranger site where they found Kyle. There actually wasn't originally Kids in the Woods scene. That was something that came a little bit later because we spent a little bit more time with Kyle in there. And I think there was even a version where we said that if we were going to make it a studio version, we would go in and retell part of Kyle's story, that we would go and refilm parts of him to make it sort of like a big narrative instead of having to go back and redo stuff, just to weave in more Kyle as we go. That way, both stories were building at the same time. And that was something that we obviously weren't going to do since we had already shot Never Hike Alone in this version. So long story short, we do get to that same part. The ambulance picks him up. We watch Jason take out the ranger. We watch Jason take out everybody in the ambulance. The fight, they drive down the road. That was all, basically from the original day that I pitched it, that's one of the first scenes that I pitched. And I want to say that that's the scene that Never Hike Alone 2 grew out of, because I knew Never Hike Alone ended with them driving away. And I thought about, like, what happened next. And I thought, well, Tommy doesn't really run. Like, he would fight. He would fight until he couldn't fight anymore, type thing. And that's where that shotgun scene kind of came out of. And there are certain elements in Never Hike Alone 1 where we were setting that up. That's why the bag is there in Never Hike Alone 1. I was already trying to lay those tracks in there very early on while I was still making the first movie. So the only difference is that in the version that we pitched, if we had a little bit more money, we wanted to go and do more damage to Tom's arm, that, like, he actually, like, rips, like, so much skin and, like, meat off of his bone that when he drops the patch, it's, like, covered in, like, skin and meat too. It was just something that we, on the fly, we couldn't build on the day, and just we had so many other things to build. We'd never really amplified that specific beat. We knew that we needed to just sell the patch and go. So that was something that we stepped a little bit back on just to, like, execute it properly. They go from there. Thom comes back to the hospital, but the near miss isn't with Diana. It's actually with his daughter. And so the whole chaos of, like, him showing up, his daughter being there, all this stuff going, him telling her that she has to go, her refusing to leave. It was very much starting to build this relationship where Thom was going to become Garris, and Andrew and his daughter were going to become, like, Megan and Tommy. It was going to be a really funny love triangle type thing. Obviously, Kyle was going in for surgery, all of that stuff. And it was his daughter's idea to look at the camera. That stuff was all very much woven in there. There was going to be a lot more flashback. We were going to jump into scenes of Never Hike Alone 2 as they watched the camera. And we might have even flashback as soon as they saw that, and sort of, like, built it from there. So that was another part of it that we kind of wove in, go there. So all of that has happened. But in the meantime, one of the biggest scenes that we weren't able to do was the House Party Massacre scene. That was one of the original ideas that I had, dating back to when it first started. I used to pitch this scene a lot to everybody, and it basically goes something like this. We have gone back to the hospital. Everybody's there, and they are, they're hunkered down. Rick has been notified that somebody has called in a murder, and he is out searching for stuff. And while he's out searching, he completely misses the fact that like Jason is walking into a neighborhood and just like walking through the middle of Crystal Lake. And so you start on a empty neighborhood and it just looks idyllic. It's like in the morning, and the sprinklers are on, dogs are barking, kids are laughing, and then you see the feet stepping down the road. And Jason walks down the middle of the road of this little Crystal Lake community and starts looking around. And then you hear like music, and a car like rips past him, and dude like rips into a cabin. You can tell right away, weekend party house. Cars are all over the lawn. People are partying. You see pool noodles, clothes, all that. Like the place is just a mess. And like you just see Jason sees this, and you know that this is where he's going to go. You jump ahead to the door. Knock, knock, knock. Door opens. Hey, what's up, man? Like, come on in. People come on in. They have some food. The host is like very welcoming. He's like, come on in, mi casa, su casa, like whatever you need. He's like, we got weed over there. And like, there's a bunch of potheads smoking weed. He's like, everyone's hanging out by the pool. There's a bunch of, sexy people back by the pool. He's like, and then if you want some beer over here, and there's just like kegs on kegs on kegs everywhere. And it's just like the most partyist. It's like basically the cornfield scene in Freddy versus Jason on like steroids. So as they're doing that, like, and they're like, and Nick should be here any minute with the pizza. And then you hear a knock at the door. They go over the door and they open it, and who's standing at the door but Jason? And so Jason, like, he's like, who the fuck are you? And so he looks up, and Jason looks around and he sees everybody smoking weed. He sees everybody making out, and he sees everybody like drinking booze. And then he just looks back at the kid. He's like, he basically says some kind of one-liner to him. And that's when my favorite part of this thing starts. We played Shimmy Shimmy Ya by the L. Michaels Affair, which is a remix of a Wu-Tang song. Like basically that kicks on like the house, like the local, like the source music from the scene. And there's a kill montage to the Wu-Tang Clan of Jason just clearing house. I mean, first of all, he chops that dude right in half. And he splits in half in front of everybody. Blood's going everywhere. Everybody starts running around, and then it just starts cutting around the house where one person's like running down the street, like running down the hallway, jumps into a room, slams the door, puts their back against the door, and then Jason just like slams the door forward, crushes them. Blood flies out. Somebody's trying to climb out the window, and trying to get there. And then you cut downstairs, and now people are running through the other part of the house, and they run out the sliding glass door. And that guy who was trying to come out the top roof all of a sudden just like slams down on the ground in front of them and like breaks his neck, and they stop. And then Jason jumps down, and as he does it, he rips the entire gutter system off the house, like a huge section of it. And they're all just standing there like right in a row, and he just stabs them all with the gutter. It goes through each one of them, sticks out the back. The first one falls over, and they're like kilted like this. And so blood is just like rushing out like a ice luge. And so there's just a bunch of like stuff like this where people are getting maimed and killed. It's in slow motion. Body parts are flying everywhere. And then you cut to like a wide open shot of the living room. Body parts are everywhere. Jason's just sitting there, and the music's still just going. And Jason walks over to the stereo and just chops the stereo and kills the music. And then it's silent. And he's just sitting there, and he turns back around. There's like blood dripping from the ceiling, and like people trying to like last breaths for air. And then all of a sudden, hey man, these pizzas are getting hot. Help me with these things. And so then you cut outside the house, and you just have a wide shot of the house with this dude standing there with like 10 pizzas, and the door opens. Jason's hand comes out, grabs him, pulls him in, slams the door. And there's a big like plate glass window at the front of the house, like one of those like nice like view windows. And all of a sudden, like you just hear shink, and blood and pizza hit the window and slide down. And that was the House Party Massacre scene that we wanted to do, which would have been ridiculous. So that's really what kicked that off. From there, we went back to the hospital. We figured out what happened to Kyle. Everybody rallied around what, the plan, very much like what happened before. But Tommy's daughter was really in place of where Diana Hill was. She was the lead character, and Diana was sort of that character who was suspicious about what was going on because she had heard that Tommy was sort of around the night of Never Hike in the Snow, and she sort of had more suspicion of him being involved. And so she was our Karen character versus having the Karen character that took place in Never Hike Alone 2. We sort of just shifted roles as we started doing pieces. And obviously we didn't go with the Megan Garris storyline because we couldn't get Jennifer Cooke, because Jennifer Cooke doesn't want to do anything with Friday the 13th anymore. So that's what brings me to the next thing. We want to go through all the way through, the nursing scene. They try to escape. The cops crash everything. They're all there standing off, and Jason breaks in and kills everybody. And very much in that sequence, a lot of that stuff was the same. Instead of the first nurse getting killed with the sickle, she was run through with an IV stand. But the punching through was always something that was in the film. The axe to the first camera was always something in the film. I always wanted to bring found footage back in some way, somehow. So that was always a big part of it. And then this is what was different. Diana was the one who died. Diana sees Jason, and she's the one who ends up getting killed. So in the original version of Never Hike Alone 2, Diana was the one that died because her role was more of a supporting role versus being one of the three leads. So who we're left with now is Rick, Tommy, Andrew, or Kyle, and Tommy's daughter. And they were the ones who were trying to escape. And the showdown didn't happen at the hospital. What actually happened was the sheriff station showdown. And this is one of the biggest changes that we made. And I had to cut this entire sequence out, and I cried because it has some of the coolest moments that I think I could ever pitch as far as like what would make a really good Friday the 13th scene. That really, in my opinion, this was the scene in the original pitch that sort of brought Never Hike Alone right back into Friday the 13th, and it really linked up, the tracks. And so it started with them, all the characters running into the sheriff station, just trying to collect themselves. Rick was, coming to terms with the fact that Jason was alive. Then nobody knows what they're going to do because all the cars were destroyed, and all the cop cars are over there, and now they got to find a way to get back to the camp and what they're going to do. And in the process, Jason follows them across the street and breaks into the jail cell. Now the few cops that are in the sheriff's office, they get wasted. It's pretty much like Jason Goes to Hell. He's just taking out people in the police station. And the way that Tommy and the gang saved themselves is by getting themselves back into the cell block and locking themselves in a cell, like in part 6. And so hiding behind the cage, they are basically safe from Jason, sort of. So what first comes happen is Jason gets over to the jail cell and stops and looks at them. And this is the first time that like Rick really gets like a good look at Jason, and he takes his shot. He steps forward and he shoots Jason right between the eyes with, his gun. Right wherever the red dot go, you bang, hits him right in the forehead. But what happens here is, in the original version, that bullet splits Jason's mask. And there was going to be like beautiful moonlight coming in through the jail cell. So it was going to be really shadowed. Like the mask was going to fall off and fall to the floor. And Jason was going to like lean forward. I remember and this is sort of where the idea came from originally, where he does the whole head back thing, is that his head goes back and then he pulls himself forward with the bars to like get forward again. And you kind of see his face in the rim shadow light of like whatever. And there's a bullet hole right here. And that's when he starts to pull on the metal. And that's the first time you ever see like supernatural strength with Jason, but he's just so pissed off. Like you almost feel like his energy, like the curse is like working with him. And he starts to pull these bars right out of the friggin' wall. But before he can do it, there's bam, 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 bam. And you look over, and the deputy dispatch character, who was sort of like a running joke of the film. And you saw a little bit of that in Never Hike Alone too. Like he seems to be the novice, very much remind me of Farva when I was writing him. Like he just wants to be out in the field. Like he wants to give it a shot. He can't get out there. Well, now this is his shot. He's pulled out every gun that he can find in the station, and he's just shooting the shit out of Jason. Jason's eating all the bullets. The bullets are bouncing around the jail cells. So they're all kind of like going down. And then Jason takes after him, and Rick's just like, run. So deputy dispatch runs into a back room, which is basically the armory, locks the door, gets a shotgun off the wall, pumps it full of shells, and just waits by the door. And he's just waiting for Jason. And there's like a plate, one of those like frosted glass windows. So he's waiting for the shadow to come in front of the door so he can just blast Jason. And before he can do anything, Jason instead comes through the sidewall, takes the entire piece of wall, pushes it across the entire room and then crushes this dude under the wall, and he pops like a fucking balloon. And so blood goes everywhere, and he's doing that. Now remember, Jason is maskless at this point. He's just like gnarred face, like jaw hanging, looking nasty. And he looks over and he catches his reflection in a piece of glass. But behind that piece of glass is something in a shadow box, something that was gifted to the police department from the fire department. And what it says on the plate underneath it is for Garris. And inside this shadow box is the original mask from Friday the 13th, Part 7. Because if you remember, a member of the fire department picks up the mask at the end of that movie and clicks it together. And so I wanted to weave in this sense that there was a sense of community that, like, when they lost Garris, that actually really affected the town. And so this was something that when Part 7 happened, that like they gave it to the police station to say, hey, you can bury your ghosts. The mask is sort of welded back together in a way. Like, I think I just had, like, the idea was that, like, there were going to be metal wraps around each break, like in the eye and the head and there, and just sort of be woven. But there was just something kind of keeping it together. So it was all sort of, Jason smashes the glass, takes the original mask out, and puts it on for the first time in 20 years. And so this was like for me, it was just like a huge moment, because it was like, here we go. Now we're showing people that Never Hike Alone was just a step in the journey to get back to the original story, and that like everything's sort of coming together again. Obviously that's a lot. And, you know, over time, when you start, you know, trying to put these ideas together, even though it's a great idea, I really had to pare that down. And, you know, we ended up doing like the great Rick scene there. But, you know, after he puts on that mask, Tommy and the gang escape. And so at that moment, like, Jason hears them, goes outside, and you know, sees them kind of going in different directions. Rick's going one way, and Tommy and the gang are going another. Rick's going to get reinforcements, and the gang is going to the camp. And so Jason, knowing what he has to do, goes to the camp. And we always had a version of the walking off the dock scene. The scene that we didn't get to do, which was a little bit longer, which would have been a little bit more complicated to do, was I originally wanted to have a little Part 6 Martin flavor in there. And when you cut away from the hospital, you would cut down to a dock, and it would be moonlit. And you would hear somebody going, Popeye the Sailor Man, Popeye the Sailor Man, I'm strong to the finish because I eat my spinach. And then you cut to a dude who's sitting on the end of his little rowboat, you know, tied to the dock, takes my spinach, takes a shot of whiskey out of a flask, and then says, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. And starts doing that. And then he hears like the steps, and he looks and he sees Jason just like walk by him and then drop into the water. And so you watch the whole like kind of moment through his eyes, which I thought would have been kind of cool and funny in like a big film kind of way. Although I got to say, I like the way we did it for Never Hike Alone 2. Had a lot more purpose. He was pissed off. And it was just kind of cool to see him just whoop right into the lake. And no, he did not teleport. He walked across the lake. It's a shorter walk that way than to go up the road. Should have done it in the first place to just get to the hospital. So that was the Popeye the Sailor Man scene, which was small. It was an idea. I don't know if we were actually really going to do it, but to me, I like it. It's one of my favorite ones. I just like kind of stuff like that. The song at the beginning of the movie, which is Old Gray Mare. That's actually, I never sang the Old Gray Mare. I used to sing it. There goes Vinny floating down the Delaware, chewing on his underwear. Can't afford another pair. One day later, he was eaten by a polar bear, and that was the end of Vinny. That's the way we used to sing shit at art camp. So anyway, that's what that song is, in case you were wondering. So let's get back to Never Hike Alone 2. So we're back into the third act. There's another big difference here. This was probably one of the other biggest differences, and this was the one that I always knew I was going to have to concede on eventually, unless we got some type of studio money for this. Everything as you saw it that happened in Act 3 to them arriving to the camp, pretty much the same. But remember, Tommy's daughter is there instead of what's her face, Diana. Tommy tells her to stay back and to stay at the ambulance and to drive away and to go to safety and to get back home to her mother and not to argue. Him and Andrew, or him and Kyle, go into the camp. Same stuff. Jason comes out of the lake. They go into the cabin. And here's where things are a little different. when they get into the cabin and they start looking for Jason's mother's head, they can't find it. The first time they go in, and a lot of the early drafts, they have an impossible time trying to find the head. Jason has hidden it so well that, they're having no luck and they're screwed. And then they hear the footsteps on the roof. And so there isn't like them trying to get out and kind of get crossfired. They actually hide. And so now they're hidden in the attic. Jason drops through the ceiling. That was always in there. And he starts looking around. And he goes into his room and he like pulls back the curtain to make sure nobody's gone into his room. And he's sort of looking around. And that's when you hear the door behind him slam. And he turns around and Tommy's slamming the door and running a chain through the hooks or like the loops so he can keep the door shut. And he's just kind of doing it there. And when Jason looks around, he sees that all the gasoline, so like from the game, and like we kind of showed gas in the first Never Hike Alone. Remember, he flicks the gas can. Like, this is an old idea. All the gas cans are tipped over and there's gas everywhere. And Tommy's like, run, kid. And Aunt Kyle's like, oh shit, and starts running for the door. Tommy throws the match. They run for the door. And as they jump out the door, fireball out behind them. It blows it out. The door bounces in and then the door closes. They hit the ground, they roll over, they turn around, they look up. The cabin is on fire. And they're watching it. And, basically Kyle's like, do you think that that's going to work? He's like, I hope so. And then you start hearing the bangs. You hear like the breaking of wood, the breaking of chains, multiple heavy footsteps. Doosh, 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 pop. The door opens and out jumps Jason on fire. From 2 stories up. He's got his mother's head in one hand. And here are the other weapons that we pitched. He was either going to have the original Never Hike Alone axe, the yellow one, or he was going to have a pickaxe. And he was completely on fire. And he lands on the ground and stands up. And when he stands up, there was a huge crack of lightning across the sky and rain started to go down and the fire washed out. And that's when the fight starts, and that was a lot of the same. So now Jason goes after Tommy. So the name of that sequence is called The Roof is on Fire. And that was like, again, I knew like the visual effects sequence of the fire, the jump for the stunt, him physically being on fire, the slow motion of that, maybe having to do digital slow motion fire. But I wanted to do something like big and unique. And like we were able to do things like that. Like I think in the hospital sequence, when we had the big red sequence and the dip with all that stuff, we got to do some majestic stuff. And that was always like my aim, was to do some majestic kills and make it look really cool. But that was one of the most majestic shots that I could ever think of, is Jason jumping off the 2nd story window, landing on the ground like Superman style and standing up like completely in flames. That would have been like insane. So anyway, he gets washed out. They fight. Basically everything from there to the end is actually the original version of Never Hike Alone. There was always the idea that, it was going to take them down to the original spot where Kyle had his dream, where Pamela had been killed. It was all about destroying the head. That was always the original idea. That was the idea from the beginning of the movie, from the beginning of the concept, especially even in Never Hike Alone. And then it was Tommy's daughter who killed Jason in that. Tommy was actually so injured that he wasn't able to swing the machete. Kyle was, obviously not in the best position. He had no weapons and he was right under Jason. And Pamela still showed up, but it was Tommy's daughter who ended up killing Jason, because Jason was the thing that ruined her family. And that was her story. It was just the fact that like her parents are pulled apart. She wants them together. And this is the thing that's pulling them apart. So she kills it. And she brings them back together, which is kind of cool. So the film ended up very much in the same sort of note. Obviously, Diana was dead, so there was no sort of offshoot with her. But it was more focused on, Tommy having sort of like letting go of his past, and he was going to be leaving Crystal Lake. And I believe the original version was him moving out of his house. Like you go back to the Jarvis house, and at the end of the movie, he's packing a truck to leave, and he's going to leave the Jarvis house behind. And that was one of the last shots. And the idea is that the Jarvis house was close enough to the lake that when Andrew shows up, which I wanted to have him driving up in the Bronco and everything, like he shows up, he sees the daughter. Hey, where's your dad? He's down by the lake. He goes down to the lake. They have that conversation. And that was always a big conversation. But guess what? Oh my God, I got to double back. We're going to pause this because there was one thing that I'm forgetting. So remember, Rick Cologne didn't die, right? He went away. He went to go get reinforcements. This is the part of Never Hike Alone 2 that we actually didn't get to make, which I wish we did because we ended up having to kill Rick. At the end of the movie, and this is for anyone who has ever watched, what's the name of the movie? National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1. There's a scene where Bruce Willis has like a cameo, and this was sort of inspired by that, where like Tommy's on the side of on the beach, sort of like dying. His daughter's holding him, Andrew's holding him, and then as they're sitting there and they're wondering if like, is this it? Is Jason dead? Is it all there? You heard like, woof, 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 and they looked out over the lake, and here comes like the state police, the marshal service, anything you like, National Guard, whatever. They're all on boats, and there's a chopper flying above them all, and leaning out of the chopper with a big bullhorn is Rick with like a big machine gun ready to like take on Jason. And like basically the entire cavalry has arrived to take out Jason, but they're like 2 minutes too late. And he's out there trying to look like a badass hanging off like the helicopter. He's like, where is he? And Tommy's just like, it's over. It's over. And Rick's like, fuck. And that's when it cut to the next day. So Rick Cologne lived in that one. And there was actually a bit of, there was sort of like a cooling of their relationship. They actually became friendly at the end of the movie. I think there were words exchanged at one point that we were going to have that. But I always remember being really sad that we weren't able to hang Vinny out of a helicopter, or we were going to put him in a boat type thing if we didn't have enough money. But he ended up falling on the sword and letting us kill him in the thing. I said, you know what? If Rick can at least go out making a sacrifice, he's at least showing that he's trying to make up for the deeds that he did. So I think it worked thematically with the film, but it was kind of fun to have him live at the end. I wanted to have more episodes, give him more of a chance to like grow as a character, but we ended up kind of cutting it here. So back to the scene at the end of the movie where there is one more little difference, especially in this movie too, same reference to Loaded Weapon, Meatloaf Chip. In the original version of the film, when Kyle says his goodbye to Thom, there was an extra beat that as he's walking away from Thom, that he checks his pocket. And when he checks his pocket, he pulls out the small microchip that goes into a GoPro that has all the footage on it. So basically what he just did to Thom was just sort of like a goodwill attempt to show him like, hey, don't worry about it. Like, I'm just getting rid of this thing. I figured you wouldn't want it anyway. Or even if you wanted it, I know you don't know how to work it, but I'm going to hold on to this footage and figure out what I want to do. And I guess I'll just tease what that sort of leads to, especially with the Hikerman 5000 character, is the fact that in a movie with Hikerman 5000, which is like, again, I wanted to be prepared to pitch multiple things, that you would have a character going out looking because Kyle MacLeod went missing. Kyle MacLeod isn't posted, but he's also missing in real life, and nobody knows where he was. And it might have something to do with the footage that he found on that camera, which we could reveal that in other different ways that he's always had that type thing. But that was, those are the major differences of Never Hike Alone 2. So that was, in a rough way, the original pitch, but the original ideas with that. It mostly followed Tommy trying to deal with the fact that he was separated from his family. He was trying to solve these murders. And, again, it's when Kyle shows up and sort of puts all these events in motions that his antagonist in Rick, his antagonist in Jason, and, all these things are getting in his way, all come together. And it requires a team in order to overcome the journey and defeat Jason. And there were a lot of really fun sequences, a lot of really fun kill sequences and all of those things. And I would have loved to have done that, but that's probably a $5 million, $6 million, $10 million movie. And we were hoping to get it. I mean, we were pitching to major studios. We were going, for the full boat. If we were able to do that in animation, I think that would have been really cool. Like I said, I wanted to take the Never Hike Alone verse and sort of like pepper in episodes throughout the season, and then let other episodes sort of take their own sort of path. Or maybe the first season was all Never Hike Alone, and the second season was like a whole other story that went a whole other direction, and like basically like True Detective in a way. Like it would just go its own anthology way each season, and you just let it go where it's going to go, and it doesn't necessarily have to be connected season to season. I will say this: the original pitch got a really great feedback. And I really wish we would have been able to do that. But when you took it to Indiegogo and we started having to do it on our own, we just discovered a lot of things along the way. Like when Jennifer Cooke couldn't sign on to play Megan Garris, that's when I started to toy with everything. For example, changing the idea of what Never Hike in the Snow was and making it a kid. And that really sort of was making the death of the person in Never Hike in the Snow into a child was the big sort of turning point. And that's when I started changing all the sort of narrative to focus around this other character, which I actually did have access to. And in independent filmmaking, you can have as many great ideas as you want, but you can't, unless you have the actual assets in front of you, whether that be people or it be a place or what, be the tools, you can't do it. So you need those things to actually tell the story. And if I could just still keep it on theme of, Tommy's trying to heal his demons from the past by, the people in the future or in the present that are being affected by the thing that has affected him his entire life, that we were still on theme. We were still telling the story of Never Hike Alone 2. I was going to have to, basically give back large parts of the film in order to make the story elements work. And then where those big moments were, like Hospital Massacre Scene or like, House Party and stuff like that, the things I had to take out for budget reasons, we found ways to sort of spread that out in other areas and do other things. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I've not seen any comments. So if people are asking questions, I'm sorry, I haven't been able to really look. So I'm going to dive into the questions right now. Now is the time for the Q&A. So definitely start listening up your questions like right now. I'm going to go right to the bottom and just see there. So Mitch, since you're right there, I'm just going to use you. That's Jordan. Jordan, what are you doing? Break your legs, kid. Being forced to work with what you've got fosters creativity. Yes, it does. And a lot of great ideas came out of us not being able to do those things. So I wasn't able to use the mask the way I wanted to use. But what did we do? We retroactively wrote in this sort of storyline of the ghost talk to get the damage of the mask. That actually inspired me to go and be like, well, if I can't get the mask, maybe I can turn the ghost talk into the mask. So we created those moments where, the jaw was shot and we lost part of the mask, where the axe got hit and all that stuff, because they were originally like, they were going to come down and hit Jason with the ambulance. And then another fan film lifted a lot of ideas from that pitch, because they did hear that pitch 8 years ago or 5 years ago. And I think they took a couple of ideas and I changed some things. But it definitely fostered a lot of creativity as far as like being able to go from there. So let's see. There he is. So how did Jason get his mask in the timeline, or did you have a different idea for this? Jason gets his mask in the Ghost of Crystal Lake short story that I pitched, the one that I wanted to make as a prequel to this. In Never Hike in the Snow, you see those masks that are in the ground. And thank you for the question, Eric. I know you've asked this for a while, so let me get to this. The masks that are on the ground, there's a bunch of them, and they all have different, one looks like a Roy mask. There's another one with black sort of classic chevrons on them. And if you went through them all, they all had different designs on them. So the idea is that when he came back from Manhattan, his mask came from that pile. And the story of how he got the mask from that pile is told in The Ghost of Crystal Lake, in which another character finds that mask and the mask is taken from him. And that was something that I felt like they messed up in 2009. I felt like they really glossed over in the Friday the 13th, 2009 remake, that it was sort of like, oh, my mask got ripped. So here's this mask in a bucket. I'm going to put it on and look at this. Now I'm really cool. Okay, I'm going to go over here and leave. It was really like anticlimactic. And I wanted to write a whole story around how he became Ghost Jason. Really, it's not just about the mask, it's about the costume too, because his entire body has changed. He's coming back from Manhattan, all of his clothes are ripped off. So he's really rebuilding himself up from there. Jordan said there better be a scene where someone's legs get broken or I'm leaving. Oh yeah. Bent backwards, walking around like a kangaroo. No one has asked which part. I like the idea overall. Let's see. When are we getting a Jason Western? Ooh, Jason Western. I wonder what that would look like. In fact, I would say Ghost of Crystal Lake would be the most Western it would get, because Jason does spend some time out on the open road. He's got to get from Manhattan back to Crystal Lake. There's a lot of like walking and traveling, so he can do some like really like wide scope like type shots there. It's a real like moody piece too. So I don't know, maybe that would work. Any word on the origin of Ghost Jason animated short, the last stretch goal completed? Yes. So what we're trying to do right now is focus on getting the assets that we can get for the Never Hike Alone 2-Ray that are done now on the Blu-ray and to you as fast as possible. We still need to work on behind the scenes, but the Ghost in the Fog was gonna cost too much money. After we got all of our delays and stuff like that, we needed all that money for the film, so we ended up putting that on hold. We do have a animatic, which is storyboards that are cut together with music and sound effects. I mean, it's like kind of almost animated, but it's not the final thing, and it's not as fun as the final thing. That will be on the Blu-ray. We're going to put part of it, if not all of it, on the Blu-ray so you can see where it's at and where it's like at right now. When we do the master cut, we want to make the Ghost in the Fog a part of that campaign, so we can just add that as a bonus feature on that disc, since we're going to be doing that this summer anyway. So we'll get to it. We wish we could have done that earlier, but we really had to be smart with the money and where it went, and we had to step back on it, unfortunately. Just like the House Party Massacre Scene, which you can tell was going to be expensive. We actually changed it into something else, and we still might be able to make that one day. So I'm not going to pitch that just yet. So there, question. Will there be a super cut of the Ghost cut and NHA2? Yes and no. There's going to be a super cut. There's going to be a massive cut that everything is going to come together. I have not decided one way or what's going to actually survive the cut, or what's going to be there, or how it's going to go together, or how the disc is going to come together, because it may be multiple discs. It may be certain things. I'm going to play with the connection of it all, because it depends on, you really got to be careful with how it all kind of comes together. And it's got to be a watchable movie. You know what I mean? Like them just streaming them back to back, I want to make sure that like that actually plays well, or is there a better way to do the presentation? Depending on the type of funding that we get, we may be able to go back in and do even more editing and add things. So it's definitely it's going to happen. What that looks like, we haven't determined that just yet. Do you work with only one sound designer? Now we do. We work with Iceman Audio. They have done everything since Never Hike in the Snow and Pathosis. Aside from that, we had somebody else do it on the first movie, which was a little, we asked them to do it very quickly, and they did a great job with, very little pay. So, but Iceman are who we usually go with for sound. Please write caps on all questions so it stands out. Appreciate that. It's a good idea. Yeah, if you got any questions, write them in all caps and I'll see them. But I'm seeing them pretty good right now. Ghost Jason versus the new Ghostbusters. Oh, man, that would go from a PG to R-rated real quick. Are you going to work on Never Hike Alone 3? Not anytime soon. Everything that is Friday the 13th related going forward, aside from the supercut and, maybe some animated stuff, I think that's where you're going to see us exploring the world. But as of right now, I got to work on original things. People are waiting for me to finish original projects. I have assignments that are due. And as much as I would love to work on Friday the 13th all the time until it starts actually paying my bills, and I can officially start taking money from somebody who's paying me to do it, I have to do and work on projects that I can hopefully get some sort of financial back end on it, or at least get paid to be out there and shoot. You know what I mean? So that is a big part of it. I wish it didn't have to be a part of it, or else I would just work on Friday the 13th all the time. But I have a lot of other projects coming. And if Never Hike Alone 3 ever happens, honestly, it's going to be because streams like this. We're going to build momentum. We're going to, I'm going to stay in touch with the fans. The new movies aren't so reliant upon sort of characters from the past. These are more one-off movies about people who are their own stories and stuff like that. So there's certain, aspects there that kind of make it easy. So let's see. I would love to see a short about Ghost Jason. I love that look. Yeah, no, in fact, the short about Ghost Jason, he's very much mummy-like. Like you see him really withered down to the bone, like almost naked, which is kind of a cool part. That's why I think it would fit for animation. Would love to do it animated. It would just be really expensive. So that's the thing. We just got to remember that if people and fans want to see this, they either have to bug animation companies, Warner Brothers, and rights holders so much that somebody gives us a chance to go and pitch this again, or um, or we need to, raise a ton of money either by this channel, by Indiegogos, or actually, or Kickstarter maybe, because we may be going back to Kickstarter soon. I'll talk more about that in coming weeks, stuff like that. So it's there. You should get some survival final girls. Well, actually, I got a chance to work with Adrienne King and Amy Steele on Jason Rising, which was really cool. I think that there's a great story there, but I believe that Adrienne is involved with the new Crystal Lake series. So I don't think that she'll be wanting to work on both accounts, but we're really happy for her. Other than that, I would love to work with Trish. I would love to see where she went. Pam, I would love to see where Pam went. The rest, maybe. Let's see. Are you going to work on? I never answered that one. Let's see. Here we go. Would you consider running one campaign to cover the cost for a master cut and money needed to do Ghost of Crystal Lake as live action and have part of the final master cut in line? It would cost way too much money. I would love to do what I want to, yes, but it's just not I know you guys see the big numbers raised on Indiegogo and you see that crowdfunding stuff, but I'm going to tell you, a lot has come out of personal too. These films are very expensive. They're very intricate. The road leading up to the camp where we would shoot the film is completely gone. It was taken out in a landslide. So the production of trying to get up there and shoot it right in the right location and the exact way that we want to do it is no longer an option. I think animation would be really the only way to go with it. If I could shoot it live action, the only way to really make it sing and make it do what we really want it to do would be a studio pitch. Those opportunities might come one day. You know what I mean? I would love to sit around and try and raise the money and chase that money and do all that stuff. But the amount of work that it takes for me to do that, it takes away from my ability to go out and earn a living. And it really has. It has impacted me. The travel, the taking time off, not being able to sort of stay with one crew and keep going. A lot of my career, I've been hey, I got time to work on a show. So I go and I work on a show. I work for a full season. They're hey, we're going to go work on next season. I'm oh, I'm going to go make my movie. And so everybody thinks oh, he makes movies. He must be doing great. But it's passion. You know what I mean? The only thing that I'm getting paid at is in passion and in sort of popularity. And I would like to turn that popularity. And if everybody likes what I do and they like this channel and they want to keep watching, it would be nice that, you guys keep, singing the praises of the film, sharing it wherever you can, coming to screenings, supporting those things and supporting original projects too. Because I'm going to tell you one thing, if I have an original project that takes off, well, doing Never Hike Alone becomes a lot easier because now I have that quote unquote heat that they like to talk about. To go in and pitch meetings and also pitch to the people who own Friday the 13th and be hey, I made this original movie. I made it with this, amount of millions. And we, we're ready for Friday the 13th. And I have this great pitch and I think it'd be really cool. Can I go make it? And at that point, maybe the fan base gets so big that we're able to raise 500,000, $1 million, 1.5 and not get sued and go out and make some real stuff. I think that that's really the next step of that. If I wanted to do this, that's what I'd want to do. The way that we have been doing it, it requires everybody to get paid almost nothing. A lot of people have to work for free, and that's part of fan films, but I do have to hire some people to get the right, qualified people on set, and they're very expensive. And when they're there for 15 days, 16 days, 17 days, and it keeps going up, and you need extra days and you need to get that. You need to have the right budgets for that. And we stretched the Never Hike Alone 2 budget to the max. I mean, we were chasing money the entire time. Thank God we kept the campaign open and all that stuff. I know I'm going on about this, but I want to if I could do it tomorrow, I would, but it is a lot of work. And I am a little bit wiser, especially having to chase Never Hike Alone 2 for so long and all the things that got in the way. Next, if I was ever going to do one of these things, it would have to be, I would have to know the money was there and we could just go and I wouldn't have to worry about it because it is a really great one. Hey, look at this guy. Show us your belly button. There you go, buddy. Anything for you guys. The Agdanat. I love Agdanat Blake. Thoughts on the Supercut Indiegogo? Would you go live? We're going to go on Kickstarter, by the way. We'll, again, more about that announcement. We're leaving Indiegogo. They have sort of, again, we'll get into that another day. But I've had some good talks with Kickstarter, and we're going to run a Supercut with them eventually once we get this Indiegogo shut down. Again, shuts down on March 13th. In fact, while we're sitting here for the Q&As, how about a little bit of that? Yeah. Thank you, StreamYard. March 31st, get your pre-orders in if you want to get stuff. Anyway, so yeah, we'll get that going. It will be sometime this summer. Do you have an original slasher concept, and which other genre would you like to dip into? I'm working on another slasher concept right now, which is really sort of an elevated slasher, if you would say. It's not just like your typical slasher film. It's got like some depth, and it's cool. It's a really cool concept. It's actually the pitch deck I've been working on like for the last month and a half. So I'm really excited to start pitching that one around. I have another one that's sort of like a serial killer one that I'd like to make as a short. And then the two genres I like to play with are, three genres, I guess you could say. Horror, would love to do comedy. As you can tell, I try to write jokes into everything, and I have to pull myself back sometimes because I want to make everything so funny all the time. And then I want to do a Western. Would love to do a Western. Would love to do a sci-fi. Would love to make it all. I want to make everything. I'm not just a horror filmmaker. Not even to say not just, because horror is awesome. But I want to make everything. I'm a storyteller, and my stories go. I have an animated film that I want to do that's for kids. So it's maybe I should pitch that one day. It's called The Last Astronaut. It's a lot of fun, and it's based on a character that I helped build with the team from Turkeys and Luke Wilson. So it's kind of a cool story about that one. So let's move on to some stuff. On the weather look like Michael in Kills in the newest Scream, negative, more like concept art from the original Mummy. Go look it up. He's like literally like a walking skeleton. Question: was it like playing Jason on the Never Hike Alone films? It's a lot of fun. And again, I share this role with Brian. I want to say Brian Fuller because obviously Crystal Lake and all that stuff. And it's funny that that's going to slip in. But Brian Forrest, it would be great if Brian Fuller was involved. We'd have much more exposure. But Brian Forrest is a stunt double that I share the role with when we're both in costume or when I'm in costume. It is just a lot of fun. I'm very conscious of like the way I look on screen, and I'm taking it very seriously. But at the same time, when the cameras aren't rolling, I'm having like trying to scare people. During the scene where we were doing Jason walking out of the water, I was, staying underwater as long as I could and popping up by the dock and grabbing people's feet and stuff. So I definitely lean into the role and have a lot of fun with it when I'm in costume, for sure. I just want to say I appreciate everything you've done and how much you've changed the landscape for not just Friday the 13th, but for fan films altogether. Womp Stomp is the gold standard. Thank you, Shoebox. I think that like fan films were definitely on the way there when we started. I was inspired by a couple of, Avi Shanker's couple of fan films. He did Power Rangers, Dirty Laundry. I had seen, I knew Axanar. I knew Star Wars had good fan films. I will, Friday the 13th was needed that one, you know what I mean? And nobody had really done it just yet. So we just hit it right at the right time. And it's pretty amazing to see sort of like, you got some stuff from like 2010, 2008, 2007, then a long gap. And then 2017, Never Hike Alone hits. And then it is like, it's like the Marvel verse of like phases of like fan films that came out, which is pretty rad. And we're included in that because we thought we were only going to make one. We ended up making 4. So that was pretty fun. So thank you. I appreciate that. Once I learn how, I'll be feeding Vince all your questions as info. Yes, we'll figure that out eventually. Passion don't pay the bills. Great grandma said, if you can't sell it, then you better sit on it. Yeah, exactly. I would love to be able to sell this and do this for real, but I can't because I think I'll get sued at some point. And we really stretched this as far as we could go. I mean, I can't believe we made it this far. And people are like, every time I opened up an article, it was like, how aren't these guys sued yet? And I'd be like, I don't know. I'll tell you when I get sued. But until then, I'm going to keep going. I hope they sue you when your dreams come up. And I'm just going to get on your front lawns and be like, I hope they sue you for following your dreams. I'm just going to start following people around and doing that. That'll be fun. It'll be a whole channel. I'll be like that cart knock guy. Let me see. Allie jumping back in. I'm pretty sure half of my followers have me on mute because they get tired of me talking about NHA. Yeah, I know a lot of people spreading the word. Don't overdo it, but definitely, like, Never Hike Alone has grown because of the community. It's grown because of Friday the 13th fans. It's all about people talking and having something new to talk about. So that what was great about fan films was that, people actually had something new to talk about. And it's just tea, everybody. It's just tea. Where in place do you want to see Jason? Space, Manhattan, crossover is already taken. Honestly, I want to see Jason at a high level version of the camp in a story that makes sense. I want him in Crystal Lake. I want him in an environment he can grow as a character, as a franchise, something that can build movie to movie and add new elements to the series without feeling like it's jumping the shark, picking a direction, sticking with one continuity and tone. That's what I want to see. There's multiple ways for Jason to go, and I think Never Hike Alone demonstrated one way. It's very much the late stage Paramount. If that continued and had an ending that was more thought out towards what was set up previous to versus creating new things just to end it, like Jason Goes to Hell did. Everything in Never Hike Alone was inspired by the ways that I wanted to see things go, that Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, Freddy versus Jason, and 2009 never ended the series right for me. Same thing with 7 and 8. Like 7 and 8 didn't necessarily leave me with the best taste in my mouth with how Jason ended in those films either. So I really wanted something that felt like this was worthy of his exit. And that's what we tried to create with Never Hike Alone 2. A future thing, I would want to see them do a lot of the same things we did, in the sense that you take Jason seriously, you take the character seriously, and you build something around it that's entertaining to watch. And when you add it all up, it makes sense. And that's sort of where I want it to go, because we all love the old films and it's fun to watch them go off in all different directions. But if you're going to remake it and make it better, and remake it and make it for us, like today's audience, not the audience that is no longer watching films anymore, that type of thing. So that'd be nice. Jason versus the Border. Yeah, that's just what we need. You guys are too funny. Notice that when I showed my belly button, the viewers went to at least 40. Do a Predator fan film, but Western style Predator versus Cowboys. I like how you're thinking. Your legs may survive the night, Jordan. So for those of you who don't know, Jordan and I have a rivalry. He is a 2009 Jason. I am a Ghost Jason, and also a Part 4, Part 3 when I want to Jason. And we threaten to break each other's legs all the time. So that's just something between us. Have you ever considered a martial arts fan film? I mean, I wouldn't have to make a fan film. I would love to do martial arts film. I love The Raid. I love old Bruce Lee movies. I love old Kung Fu, Jackie Chan stunts. The thing I love most about The Raid is the camera work. I think it's some of the most dynamic, cool, interesting stuff that's been done on camera in decades. And so I would love to explore that world. I'm very much into, the world of samurai. I studied martial arts, fighting. I have seen fighters up close, the types of lives that they live. I would love to tell a story about a fighter. I understand them to a certain degree. And it's a different lifestyle. I think it's really special. I think it's kind of a cool thing, but I also just like the spectacle of fighting, a good fight scene, you know what I mean? So that would definitely be fun to do. I would 1,000% do that. Help the next Want Stomp movie come to life. Donate via the super chat. Yes, remember there are super chats. And Undead here, I won't dox him, I guess you would say, but has offered actually to help me with some stuff for the channel. So over the next few weeks, there may be some different changes. Like right now, we're doing a trial to do a 1080 stream. I hope I'm able to keep it up. It doesn't look like I think tonight maybe I've been lagging, who knows, or maybe it will go 1080 another time. Maybe I shouldn't do both at the same time. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm a rambling man. But we're gonna work on this channel. I believe in the 77,000 subscribers that are here. They're here for a reason. They're here because they like to Never Hike Alone. They like the work they do. They want to see more from us. I'm trying to give you more. I know that this can be a lucrative thing. I'm not doing this just for money. I'm doing it because this is fun. I like pitching things. I like having interactions with fans. It actually stimulates me and motivates me. It keeps me motivated. I'd like this to sort of be like a come along for the ride with me. Like Never Hike Alone 2 is over. I have dreams and aspirations, and we're going to make things in the meantime. I owe people stuff in the meantime. We're going to make shorts. We're going to do stuff, and we're going to get opportunities. And who knows? Let's take this on the road. Let's see how far we can go. Let's go to film festivals. Let's meet people. Let's interview stars. I'd love to pull more people in and do interviews and stuff like that. And Undead One here is going to help me out a big time with that. I'll slowly be upgrading the streaming things, getting better internet, clearer visions, multiple cameras. I'd love to have some transitions, maybe do some bits that we cut to bits and stuff like that. Like I'm definitely trained in to do all this stuff. It's just building it all. But, like most things, if I just jump in feet first, I build it as I go, and we'll figure out along the way. So I appreciate you all jumping in to help. Mitch the Ripper, man with no name character versus slasher villain. It's not unclear to the end of the film who the villain is. Scott Eastwood as the lead. So a slasher Western. That would work. I think that would work. I think that's got Town That Dreaded Sundown vibes. You know what I mean? Because it just sort of has that sunburnt feel. You can do some wild shit. Like, I don't know if you guys play Red Redemption 2. But there's a serial killer in that film in that game. That's really cool. It's a little side quest. You have a little something like that, which I'm going to put this out there. And I've thought about it. Maybe as a part of this stream, I may do gaming, because I do like gaming to kill time. I like doing side missions. I love open world games where you can just go around and interact with NPCs. I love Ghost of Tsushima. I love Red Dead Redemption. I love GTA. I'm not a first-person shooter. I like Friday the 13th, the game. So maybe if I can figure out how to game and get on Twitch and do things like that, I may be doing that stuff as well. So, if anybody ever wants to help me out, I'm definitely open for any fans reaching out, and let's figure out how to get me hooked up with all this stuff. And then we'll just keep running these streams. These streams may raise money over time. They may raise enough money to get the equipment so I can get all hooked up and do it the right way. And we could make this happen more often. I think the future of entertainment is going to be a lot of companies that create content just being their own distributors. And I've said this many, many times to a lot of different people, because it's like, why go to a streaming service when you can just get your product directly to people the way that we do right now with Never Hike Alone and make all the profit? You don't, there are no middlemen if you do everything, if you have it all in house. And as an independent filmmaker, if you can control your own movie, that's the most important thing you can do, because so many people lose their movies to bad deals and never make any money on them, and no one sees them anyway. So I'd rather have as much control as possible, and you may be able to have a huge hand in that. Let's see. Jason at the Trendy Millennial Boozy Summer Camp. That's all the rage right now. I wouldn't say trendy millennial bougie summer camp. It depends on where you start the film. I think time period is correct. It doesn't have to be 50s. 80s sounds right. Things can happen there. What matters is that the people feel real. It doesn't have to be bougie. Like if they're bougie, you got to show the faults in people. They can't be like one-dimensional characters like the characters from 2009, which were like as flat and wooden as characters get. There was no depth to them. Their friendships made no sense. There was no reason for any of them to be hanging out with each other. They were just there. It'd be nice to see characters interwoven into different sections of society all coming together like a good film should. It's not just about creating cannon fodder characters about that. So I think that as long as the camp is, I do think Camp Crystal Lake is meant for upper crust kids. Or it's upper crust people trying to do nice things to make themselves look better. You know what I mean? Like there's some element of that to Camp Crystal Lake, and it backfires, and they, the poor person who's working for them gets screwed, and what happens next. There's 12 movies, and here we are waiting for the 13th and the TV series and all that stuff. So it's definitely got to be the setting, or like just a really nice old dilapidated camp. The Further Adventures of Jason Voorhees. Yes, that's pretty much so. I actually wanted to do like a short stop motion or time lapse movie of the life and times of Pam's head. Where'd it go all these years? Where is it between all the films? You just see it moving from different places, like rats living inside of it, all that stuff. Jason Meets the Wolfman. Maybe one day. It's just another one of those things. Like if we're gonna do it, like No more like beating around the bush, like, hey, we need $15,000 just to like scrape by and barely make it. Like, if you guys want to see this stuff, like down the line, if we launch these campaigns to make these movies, they got to get like super funded and it's got to be great. Are you growing a mullet right now? No, it's all just growing out. It's all long. It's all there. It just flips around in the back. I can't get any of these things to pay attention. You know what I need is a backlight. I'll get there. Help me raise the money, and I'll put a little LED backlight back here, so that way, or maybe back here. I think we'll get the direction coming from back there. Source off the red. Got the white balance here. Just build it out. You know what I mean? I'm getting it one thing at a time. At least I got posters up this week. A little shout out Telluride Horror Show. Love that place. Love those guys. Anyway. Jason versus the border would be interesting. I don't think you'd have much border problems if Jason was standing there. But I hope people get the help they need. About time we agreed. Yeah, you just wait. Hey, look at this super chat. Whoop whoop. Thank you, Shagadoo. Appreciate that. $4.99. We're one step closer to my fill light and some foam panels to kill the echo. And then one day we're going to figure out how to I'm going to figure out how to hook up a DSLR or something up to this. So we get like a nice lensed view. But right now we're just off the old thing. Thank you. This one time I asked if Jason really died in Never Hike Alone 2, but he said that Tommy missed something to kill. Another thing, you think that Jason X is canning. What is the logic behind this? Thank you for this question. So at the end of Never Hike Alone 2, Jason is at rest. He's not dead. Jason can never die. He's cursed. And so the curse can't be unbroken. And that's what Tommy didn't understand, was that like it was a theory. Tommy was kind of lying to everybody. He's reading books and like that's one way to do it. But this curse specific for Jason that no one could ever really know about. And that's the thing. I think that like there's just some facts that no one could ever learn because there's no real handbook on it. Like Tommy doesn't have the answers. Only Jason knows what his fate is. And I think Jason felt this need to protect his mother. But once he saw that the head was really just an empty vessel, it was just this empty carcass that meant nothing. All these years that he didn't have to protect it, he didn't have to keep it safe, that he could rest in the lake and die and like let himself try to die. And so what's happening at the end of the film is that he's resting. I believe that something could resurrect Jason after that. I feel like the events of Jason X could take place. I really don't want to pitch that because it's something that I'd like to see down the road, but let's just say this. The story of Jason getting incarcerated. What would that look like? It's kind of a cool story. And then getting into that thing. I would also like to do Jason X2, where he would be rebuilt from the nanobots. Once again, the idea there is that Jason crashes like a meteor onto Earth 2. He lands in Crystal Lake 2, just happens so, and gets down to the bottom of the lake. Something that he drags with him from space, something that has happened. There's some sort of radiation. There's some sort of something that's attached to the little last remnants of metal that make up Uber Jason. There's a big warning that goes out. The lake is polluted. And like, this is the future. So the whole lake has like LED warning signs. It's keeping people out. It's shooing people out of the water. We need to fix this. What do they use to fix the radioactive waste in the lake? More nanobots. So the nanobots go down into the lake. They start cleaning all the radiation up. They get to the part of Jason and they short circuit and they rebuild Jason X from the ground up. Although he's not as like bulky and weird looking, he would be a little bit more like traditional Jason looking. And from there, you just have a new Jason walking around on Earth. Like, not like Jason, like flesh and bone, but he would be a metallic cyborg Jason that is now stalking the new Crystal Lake. And I think that would make a great Jason X2. So tell me when to call me. Compliment. Fantastic job in the Never Hike Alone series. Keep them coming with more project. I look forward to it. Thank you, Blue Wolf. Awu, awu. El Solo Lobo, baby. How much of you was real in the character in 13 Fanboy? When I told, what was real? I don't know. I just basically said, like, I just be myself, but more of a dick. I mean, I was basically just acting naturally. I didn't try to do anything. And then what I tried to imagine was, imagine if like I went through the effort of making Never Hike Alone and every single Friday the 13th alumni like hated me. And like I was just like this psychopath that wanted their attention, and would do anything to get it. And you know, essentially in that film, like I fall victim to being manipulated by Judy Aronson. So there is sort of that thing. So you know, there's pieces of, I guess, that are kind of real. I try to be like my natural self, and then I just went to a dark place for all the dark stuff, and it was a lot of fun. I love hearing all your ideas. Thank you. Canon to Never Hike Alone. I mean, yeah. So it just basically Never Hike Alone. He's laying at the bottom of the lake. Eventually, something will disturb him, and he'll want to come back out just to keep his peace. So at that point, Jason will sort of like the evolving of Godzilla. You know what I mean? At this point, he becomes the peace protector. Like they try to build a new, you know, housing thing on Camp Crystal Lake. Like they sold the land and all that stuff. Well, not on Jason's watch. Kills everybody. In the process of doing that, like finally there's no, you know, Rick there anymore. So like when this happens, people actually take action, and then they try to handle what Jason is. In the process of that, that's how you get into the Jason X sort of storyline. Which would be a fun one to tell. And we've actually talked about that with the Gallows Lane team about coming up with different ideas for that. So that'd be kind of fun. I did like part 7, the final girl being able to go toe to toe with Jason, but the ending, Jason being dragged to the bottom of the lake by a muddy looking guy. Come on. Exactly. You know, at least at the beginning of the film, or at least the beginning idea John Carl Buechler had was to have, you know, like a decrepit father pull him down into the lake. But even then, that doesn't make much sense, right? Like, why was the dad still at the bottom of the lake? Or is this something that Crystal Lake does? Like, when you drown in it, like it just sucks you into the lake bed and no one can ever find you. It seems to be like a weird thing. Alan Wake 2, I've never played an Alan Wake game. Maybe I got to give it a shot. Like, I would love to like have people just feed me the answers of what I'm supposed to do, and then you guys can just watch me react, because I've been told it's pretty funny. I like flip out at video games. So you probably see me do some of that. I talk a lot of shit to video games. My brothers always love that. So sure. I've never played Dead by Daylight. I kind of have like this stigma with it because it always talks so much crap about the Friday the 13th game. And I'm such a Friday the 13th game stan that I don't know if I could bring myself to play Dead by Daylight, but who knows, maybe one day. No more belly buttons, only one per stream. Dead Space fan film. I would need to see play Dead Space and get into it to really do it. You said that Jason X is canon, Never Hike Alone, and why? You keep asking this one. Let me see. Or did I get bounced or something? Town That Dreaded Sundown remake, maybe. Yep. One problem is Google takes half your super chat, which is true. Maybe explore Patreon and other avenues so that your diehards can help you. Yes, thank you. Maybe you guys can get on a chat and you can walk me through it like an old man. Be like, which button do I press? Oh no, millennials, myself included. I'm also I'm an older millennial. Currently get a kick from team building, reliving our childhood as adult summer camp weekend with booze. Very, very fun. Bam, going through. I think we'll do maybe like 5 more minutes of questions. Yep, costs out the wazoo for a weekend, definitely. Politics ruins entertainment to a certain degree, depending on, you know, sometimes political thrillers are fun. Hey, Vince, get a background light so we can see this mullet. I'm going to work on it. The general assumption is that Jason is a zombie. I think a better explanation is that Jason is undying is a subtle difference. Well, Revenant, and that's why we always say Revenant, because Revenants are an undying spirit that is stuck in a curse. And so that seems to make the most sense for Jason, right? I mean, just, you know, Jason X2 would be total fire. Yes, it would. Stout mullet light. Thank you. Yeah, we'll get the mullet light out. We'll get it nice and flowing there. Party in the front and back. Please know I hated Jason X. None of that. No Jason X slight in this chat room. You got to listen to you guys friggin' talk about 2009 all week. Everyone's all of a sudden loves that film. Where were you 10 years, like 15 years ago when we needed you to get another movie made? Nobody went and see the movie after a second week. They didn't want to make it. So funny. See, nanobots. Fun. You know, there are fun sides to Friday the 13th. I do. Oh, yeah. Cross Jason with Dylan's New Nightmare. We'll see what comes up with Dylan's New Nightmare. I heard there's some cool things happen behind the scenes. But again, if people want to see Ghost Jason versus Neo Freddy and the Dylan's New Nightmare story live on, they got to support stuff. So when we come back out, we do these things, we got to get out there. We got to work, right now we're 36 deep in this chat. It's been going back and forth, but 36 people sharing stuff every other day can do a lot of damage. Trust me. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you guys. I think for now, it's just a little bit, it's actually just getting some funds over the line for me that YouTube owes me anyway. So it'd be nice to get that. Like I said, we're going to set up a pay stream that makes sense. I just want to do the right stuff and make sure they're so Patreon or like subscribers or anything like that. I will talk to my friends who are more professional streamers than I, and we'll get that sorted. I'm almost kind of Ali. Thank you so much. Appreciate the super chat. Definitely, we're gonna work on that stuff. Undead's been helping me out with that. Red Dead Jason. You know what I would kill for Red Dead Jason. I hope they make a new Friday the 13th video game. If you could work with another actor from the Friday the 13th films, who would you choose? I would love to work with Derek Mears. I would love to put Jason. I would love to put Derek in a Jason costume. I have an idea for Kane Hodder, which is really cool. Maybe we'll do that story another day. That one was called Friday the 13th Bachelor Weekend, and it was a special fan film that I came up with for Kane Hodder that was pretty much the original idea of Never Hike Alone. It was an idea that I wrote before Never Hike Alone. Never Hike Alone sort of came after it, and Bachelor Weekend was a really fun short film that had a great twist and had a different sort of twist on a very popular thing that became popular in Never Hike Alone. I'm telling you, like, all these ideas that I've had for all these years all wove their way into Never Hike Alone and created new life. Like, where they came from and started is like almost completely different. Who's my favorite final girl? Amy Steele, Ginny. Oh, forever in my heart. Horror ideas in anime, would love to. Animation, but animation is so expensive, anime especially, to do it right. So yes, I have lots of ideas for animation. Oops, hitting my mic all over the place. There. The question, has the stream been spotty? Has the video quality been okay? Has the sound quality been okay? I'm working with like low rent stuff right now, but I just want to make sure that the signal is okay, because I'm broadcasting from this room under the stairs, which I love it under here. I just want to make sure that I'm getting enough signal to give you guys clear audio and stuff like that. So just give me a thumbs up if it's all coming, and smash that like button. So let's see. What is the email address of the studio executive, the man we need to spam to attach Friday the 13th show or movie? I'll email him daily. I just think, when you see posts about Friday the 13th, when you see posts about Crystal Lake, just pepper us in there. Just share a link, share a film, share a Kickstarter, share any of that stuff. And I think that, a little bit goes a long way. My idea for Derek Mears, I would just love to dress him up as Ghost Jason and just do a short with him as Ghost Jason. That's basically it. I just want to see him as Jason again, but utilized differently. And I want to work on a 2009 prequel with you, Mr. Jordan Harvey. And we're going to come up with some ideas that we would love to see Derek do, but you're going to do them. We're going to empower you, another fan stepping into the role of the fan Jason. I want to see it. And if you don't do it, I'll break your legs. Little Spot, Freezy. I don't know what that is. I'd voice act for free if you do an anime, not going to lie. Okay. We'll get voices in there. I think we're going to do that. It lags here and there. Okay. As long as it's just here and there, that's fine. We'll get the channel up and running. We'll make a little dough. We'll bump up that stuff. Great stream. Talk to you guys soon too. So yeah, guys, it's been going for about an hour and a half, a little bit over. I think it's about that time. Next week on the Ghost Files, I'm going to redo my rant of 2009. And we're going to talk about the last 15 years of Friday the 13th and sort of what I believe is sort of Friday the 13th, 2009's fault, good and bad. I mean, because without 2009, without the complete collapse of the Friday the 13th franchise, we never would have had Never Hike Alone. I probably would have never had a chance to work on a Friday the 13th. So it opened up an opportunity for me, but I'm going to talk about the things in that movie in response to a brilliant Collider article that was written this week. bravo to, those fans and those people celebrating 2009. I think part of the fun part about being a Friday the 13th fan is that there is healthy and open debate on things. We'll get to that in a second. Open and healthy debate on things. So we're going to talk about the film, and I'm going to talk about a few key elements of that film that really rubbed me the wrong way and what I thought the film needed to do in order to set itself up for a decade of success versus a decade of no movies. My son does anime work. Oh, cool. Yeah. Does he animate? We'll talk about it offline. Let's do it up. Still eagerly awaiting my IMDb special credit. Thanks for NHA2 and Ghost in the Fog animated film. I got your email, Puvo. We will get it up there. Just haven't, you know what I mean? Like, I got to get everybody organized. I've been working on that. And then I got to start uploading an IMDb. It's going to happen. It's just not the highest thing on my list right now because I've just put my life back together. But we'll get there. I think enjoyed this very much. I hope everyone have a great Friday. Yes. Pamela Baker's best part of 2009. Actually, the axe throw is, but she's great too. Thank you, Shagadoo. Thanks again for that. I know Google is robbing us all blind, but we'll do it. All right, everybody. This is going to do it for this week. Let's do it the right way. Let's go out on the right thing.
Because it's gonna go hard. Let's go.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Obviously, we will try to get better at this each week. But I really appreciate you guys kind of helping me out with this. We've been having a lot of fun. And we will see you next week. I don't know what the date is because I don't think that far ahead. Let me see. I'm going to do that. So we'll see you next week. We're going to talk about 2009, maybe some other things. And until then, have a great weekend, and I'll see you on the trails.